Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of
Ghetto.
My name is Hans
I'm Edward.
and we are your hosts for now and forevermore.
Or until we need to set the sails on the digital piracy bus once more.
Army matey!
Yes.
Yeah, with the way things are going at the moment, with all the changes that Netflix wants to do, a lot of people are considering resorting back to piracy, which in itself is quite a fun and interesting topic, which is not what today's discussion is going to be about, but it is related to what we will be speaking of, and that is owning digital licenses in the modern age, what it means, the truth behind it, and whether or not you ever really did ever own the software you've purchased.
Yeah.
Or hardware even.
That includes hardware, yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who have been listening for a while, thank you so much. You'll know that we spoke about some unique topics in episodes 85 and 86, which are natural precursors to this one, which is episode 87. So if you are interested in subscriptions and I forgot what the other one was, but they're all sort of leading towards what we're speaking about today, and that has to do with digital ownership. So with that in mind, Edward, where would you like to begin?
That's a doozy. The thing with
The
thing with digital ownership is pretty much just licensing, and beginning with licensing, you can go way back.
Yeah. That's the point that I was hoping that you were going to make, right? So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's take okay. Before we do that, Edward and I are proponents of a all digital future. All right. I haven't purchased physical media, and by that I mean like Blu-rays, DVDs, game discs, or even books for that matter, since at least 2013, possibly even before that date. So it's been almost a decade of not buying physical media, and I've really had zero issues. Now, what's interesting about that is there are still a lot of people today who would argue that physical media is something they will never want to let go of. They believe that having a tangible piece of whatever it is that they've bought, whether it's a Blu-ray or a DVD or a musical disc or even an LP, they believe that having that is superior to the digital form of the same product.
Yeah.
Now, once upon a time, I would perhaps have agreed with that. Mainly because once upon a time, that was the only way of procuring any form of media. Sure, you could listen to the radio or you could watch television, but you could never enjoy whatever it is you wanted on demand. It was always whatever the broadcaster at that particular point in time decided to air.
Yeah.
In the 2 decades or decade and a half that, the internet and digital infrastructure has changed a lot of the ways we consume things, we now have the option of, for example, opening Netflix and streaming a myriad of hundreds, if not possibly thousands, depending on the market in which you live, pieces of content instantaneously.
Yeah.
So it's a very different world today than it was even 5 years ago. Now, the reason why we are mentioning all of this now is because of what this discussion is essentially going to be about. And that is the argument of physical versus digital, and then digital in its own right. So we've mentioned now how there are people, the purists, who believe that physical is the way. You have your disc, and as long as you have your disc, you have the media. As long as you have the disc and you have something that can use the disc, you always have access to the media that you've purchased.
Yeah.
That is only partially true.
Exactly. Because one of the big proponents I always see in the digital versus analog discussion is literally always the fact that, if I buy hardware, if I buy analog, if I buy hard copy, it's mine forever, which is definitely not true. People think
it couldn't be further from the truth, actually.
Yeah, because the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, all I was going to say is I was one of those people.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I used to buy Blu-rays and DVDs, I was always like, "Oh yeah, own this now. It's mine."
Yeah.
But anyone who looks at the actual disc and the words written on the disc will know they don't own squat. They actually only own a piece of flat plastic.
Yes. It's literally just a medium for you to use the license you have bought. It's literally the same as digital. It's just not on the PC.
Yeah.
It's just not on the mobile.
Now, that in itself is quite an interesting thing, because a lot of people don't realize that physical media is just a physical license.
Yeah.
So you don't own the product. You don't own the copyright. All you own is a license allowing you to use the product. Yeah. And something that many people also don't realize is that license is technically non-transferable. So if you buy a physical CD or a disc or a game, doesn't matter what it is, a physical copy of something, and you give it to your sibling or anybody else to listen to that you bought, it's technically against the copyright that you agreed to when you bought said medium.
It's very much piracy in a way. They always one of the words you always see. Well, a few of the words you always see on the discs is for private use only. This doesn't mean it's only for use within your home. It means it's only for use for you. Even playing it to your family is technically breaching copyright.
So you make a good point, because we did mention one of the previous episodes about I think it was subscription payments and versus buying something in its own right.
Yeah.
And we had that discussion about why you go to the cinema or rather stay at home. And that was because Hollywood prefers to know how many eyeballs are watching the film.
Yes.
In this circumstance, it's a very similar situation. Now, although they cannot control how you utilize the media that you've purchased, and bear in mind, this is digital and physical now, because whether you buy the movie digitally or physically, the license is technically the same. You can't distribute it, you can't resell it, you technically are not allowed to share it, and it's for your use only. So, even putting it on your TV and multiple people watching it effectively, technically goes against it, but nobody ever pushes that because it's impossible to control.
In fact, many companies have sort of embraced the fact that it's half familial instead of personal, like with the HomePod, with the Xbox sharing.
Netflix.
A bit too soon on that one.
For those who may not know, it's because Netflix is planning on cracking down on password sharing, which is completely going against what their 2017 notion of sharing the password with as many people as possible used to be like. And that's all because of revenue. So what is interesting, something that I do want to mention, is that although, whether digital or physical, but let's continue talking about physical because this is where we are right now, you aren't allowed to redistribute, sell, share, anything like that. The license explicitly prohibits it. What is interesting, though, and this applies to digital as well, and I didn't know this, is fair use of said media.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is that the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is quite stringent, it's quite strict. But more recently, in 2015, there was a clause that expired with regards to allowing people to use copyrighted media for fair use. And by fair use, we're not talking about uploading it to YouTube and everybody can just watch it. We're talking about, channels like Screen Junkies, where they have footage of movies while they're, having a debate or a discussion or a review. That is considered fair use because you're showcasing the media, but you're offering discourse on it. So you're not just allowing the media to be viewed as is, because you're now offering your interpretation of the media over said medium.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, especially today with YouTube and all these reaction channels such as Screen Junkies, it's pretty much evolved. Fair use is still a big gray area. There was a court case a few years ago considering fair use, and I forgot the name now. But you know how when a court case is won, they in the future they're always referred to as this name and this name. It's never like
it's precedent setting. I
yes,
assume.
essentially. Yeah. And what happened is we found out that many of the reaction channels, instead of putting up the entire movie now and just talking over the movie, which is technically fair use, in the most basic of terms, that's literally fair use, you are now not allowed to do that anymore. But you can do it when you cut it down. So even if you cut it down to 1 minute snippets or 30-second snippets, and you do that for the entire video, like every 30 seconds you include a snippet, that's allowed again. It's actually a very weird thing.
Well, but look, I suppose that makes sense to a degree, because even if somebody was just offering commentary and you can't listen to what is being played out in the film, you can technically still grasp and watch it, right? If they don't do any edits or cuts.
Yeah, that was the big thing about that, yeah.
What's interesting about this, though, is how different mediums share the same copyrights despite the technologies evolving and making those copyrights fall away, or rather not fall away, become ignored. And one of those is specifically got to do with video games. I mentioned it because I know that, from what I stand to be corrected, of course, but my understanding is that video game copyright also prohibits the sharing of, not just the sharing of the game itself, but the actual distribution of it from a visual perspective.
Yep.
And then that therefore goes against services like Twitch, which are all about streaming your video game to audiences around the world.
Yep.
But of course, game makers quickly realized that that was a positive thing, not a negative thing. So no one ever pursued that, except for Nintendo. Nintendo is one of the biggest ones.
They literally
see everybody
channels.
for everything.
Yeah.
Like I can say Mario here, and all of a sudden, we'll have
we'll have a possible
Nintendo
case.
down on our case. Yeah.
Yeah, Nintendo is notoriously bad in that regard. Gosh.
So we've mentioned a bit of the physical aspect now, and how owning a physical copy of something does not mean you own the license. So therefore, to me, that begs the question of why then would you still want to own physical media? Now, I suppose one part of that is, as long as you have something to use or enjoy said physical media, something that cannot connect to the internet, then yes, perhaps that is true, and you will always have access to said media.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize is that the non-exclusive rights to watch something are not perpetual. So just because you've bought a Blu-ray, by no means that that Blu-ray will always, forever, through the course of your life, work.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say this because we do live in a digital age, and there's no way of looking past that point. So a lot of new technologies, or not new, even older ones, DVD players, Blu-ray players, and specifically we use Blu-ray and DVD a lot because those are the major forms of mass distribution of media today, is that a lot of players require software updates. And it is entirely possible that in a software update, you just listen to the scenario now. It is a hypothetical, but it exists within the copyright of the media that you have purchased. And that is that, let's say you have an Avatar Blu-ray that you absolutely love from 20th Century Fox, and you bought it when it came out, and all of a sudden 20th Century Fox gets bought out by some other conglomerate company, and they're like, well, we don't want anybody to be able to watch Avatar anymore. So then they send out a update to everybody's Blu-ray players, and all of a sudden, those Blu-rays no longer function. of course, that's only if the Blu-ray player is connected to the internet. But I mean, come on, what in today's day and age is not connected to the internet anymore?
Yeah.
Now, that hasn't necessarily happened just yet, but it is important to note that the piece of plastic that you've purchased as a physical piece of media contains that within the copyright and fair place usage in the license.
Yep.
So that, therefore, if you really understand what it means to have physical media today, you then, at least for myself, you come to the conclusion of why bother? Why bother with the inconvenience, first of all, of physical media? It takes up space. You want to change something, you have to physically go to the player and switch out discs, so on and so forth, versus the exact same license, just digitally.
Yeah. See, the
Right?
the argument can be made that, sure, maybe you have a classic Blu-ray player and it never goes online, and you just pop it in and the DVD will always play. Sure, fine, that's good and well. So in that instance, you bought a license that is technically, let's say it's defunct. Let's say it's Transformers. Whatever that Transformers game was that just got pulled the other day off of store shelves. But you pop it in and you want to play it and you're completely offline. You live off the grid. Fine. You can still play this game and you're good to go for the rest of however long you have this particular piece of hardware.
The hardware lasts, yeah.
Yes. But whereas digital, obviously, you're confined, you're more limited in that regard. The moment it gets pulled, you can't play it anymore unless it's on Steam, which has specific rules in place against publishers of doing that. So sure, you can make that argument, especially the proponents of, yes, I own the thing if I buy hardware.
You know what argument I would more so make is preservation of art.
That's the thing I was getting to.
Okay.
Yeah, no, go on.
No, so the whole thing is, the one perk, I suppose, of owning a physical piece of media is that it cannot be updated or changed.
Yes.
Whatever's on the disc, that's what it is.
Exactly. So
a very good example of this is the original Star Wars trilogy, right? Episodes 4, 5, and 6. So there was an original Blu-ray that was released years ago, which had all of the original puppeteering and so on and so forth.
Yeah, before.
But then that was that came and then went, and it wasn't made again. Then there were the enhanced versions of those films, and a lot of people were really upset about it because they were like, "Well, where's the original? At the very least, include the original version of the film, not now this new updated master with CGI in place of puppeteering and so on and so forth." And then there was a huge discussion about how, art should be preserved. And I suppose in this perspective, this would be the only reason, perhaps, why physical media still has a place today. And that is because digital media can be modified and enhanced and changed without you even thinking about it. And there's been a lot of cases of this happening recently. One of the most recent being Gone with the Wind, whereby there was a claim of the film being racially insensitive. So HBO Max, as far as I understand, that was the service, actually went in and modified the film to make it more politically correct for today's climate. There's been other examples as well, such as Game of Thrones, where there was a bottle that was included in a scene. So HBO, once again, went back, re-edited the file and uploaded the correct version, so the bottle was no longer there. So, the one argument is that's the one nice thing about digital, is that things can always be improved and changed. But then at the same time, a gross negative is that sometimes the original version of something should be maintained and preserved, because a lot of the things we're talking about now, whether it's music, games, TV series, videos, movies, so I'm repeating myself now, they are technically works of art in their own in their own form, in their own sense.
Exactly.
And so having copies of the original way that things were before digital remasters and so on and so forth is important. It is important. So I'm not saying that there's no place for physical media. I think there is a place for it from a preservation perspective. But I don't feel personally that there's a place for physical media as a consumer in the digital age.
Yeah. That's
my
exactly
personal opinion.
Yeah.
Because the licensing is the same. So why then do you want to have the inconvenience of physical media? You see?
Yeah.
Then, of course, this then goes towards our other discussion about subscriptions. And what is most interesting about that, right, is how you can. So I recently bought The Batman, the latest film with Robert Pattinson by Matt Reeves. I bought it because I was excited for it. I wanted to watch it, and I like Batman, and everything that I'd seen was good, and the reviews said it was really good. So I purchased it. But I know full well this is a digital license. I know that at any time Warner Brothers can rescind it, so I will lose the 400 Rand that I've spent.
Yeah.
But logically speaking, I find that that's a fair enough trade-off for the convenience of being able to watch the film whenever I want to watch it digitally using the internet. Because if I went to the cinema and paid more money, because it would have cost me more to watch it in the cinema, I would have seen it once and be done with it. Whereas now I own a digital copy that I can play whenever I want.
Yeah. Or
but
alternatively,
now,
sorry.
No, I just wanted to lead into how I then talk about subscriptions.
Yes.
Where instead of spending the $35 for a single film, I could spend the $30 for 3 months of an HBO Max subscription and watch it on that service.
Exactly.
So the whole argument is, given how you never own any of this stuff, regardless of whether it is physical media or a digital license, then you may as well get a subscription.
Exactly. The only argument against it being that if you buy it, whether digital or not, is that you can watch it for however long you want, whenever you want. Even let's say you have a 1 month subscription to Netflix or HBO Max. You can then watch this movie as much as you want in this 1 month. The moment the month ends, you lose all your access to this movie. Whereas if you bought it, you still have the access. But then the counter argument is the subscription, number one, is a fraction of the price of the movie. And number two, it gives you access to hundreds more movies on top of that. Correct. This literally leads back to our conversation we had last time. And I just find it funny that people still argue against them. Even knowing licensing and how
I think that's the issue. I think people don't comprehend the licensing. So something else to really think about physical media in this respect is that companies haven't really persecuted people for infringing on physical copyrights, with the exception of if it's been done in a gross manner. And by that, I mean like somebody takes a Blu-ray and plugs it into like a cinema projector and then charges people to watch the film. That, of course, is entirely unethical and it goes against all of the things. However, there are other use case scenarios where that is allowed, and primarily in education. I mean, think about how many times in schools teachers have used film to help their students understand subject material. So, in that respect, a company's not going to go and sue a school now just because it allowed, students to watch The Lion King or whatever movie that they need to do for class, like Shakespeare or Hamlet or whatever the case is.
There are a few companies I know absolutely well.
Okay, sure, fair enough. But I think it's just got to do with how difficult it would be to actually come down on all of those schools that would do that. But then again, as far as I understand, that does fall under fair use.
Most of the time,
so it's a little bit different, right? Also, they're not charging the kids for it. So I'm not saying that that's right. So please don't go and plug DVDs in and broadcast like the Batman through your window, like 24/7 or whatever.
That's not the same.
That's not the same thing. So yeah, it's interesting when you understand the legalese behind the licensing that studios give you as the consumer, which really is, at the end of the day, just the ability for you, yourself, only your two eyes, to watch whatever it is, or to play, or to enjoy whatever it is you have purchased. So, once again, that comes down to the whole point of, well, personally speaking, that throws physical media totally out of the window. Like, why even bother? So then, again, why buy digital, right? When something like a subscription gives you all of that for a much smaller price, given how, regardless of how you buy the medium, you don't ever own it. Ever. You only own a license to enjoy it. But that license can at any moment be rescinded, even physical.
It's actually bad in a way, that it's always been like this and people haven't realized.
I suppose it makes sense in a way. Like, if I think about it like this, let's assume the two of us made a movie, we make a film, and then we sell said film. Just because we sell copies of it doesn't mean that they now own the film. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we wrote it, we directed it, we paid to have it all done. We are now just offering the public an option of being able to enjoy the film in the privacy of their own home at a cost. But they don't actually own anything to do with the film.
Exactly.
Or game, or whatever it is,
Think stage play all the way back before film was even a thing. You paid for the opportunity to see it, to enjoy it, whether with the family or otherwise.
That's how cinemas work, right?
Exactly. And
that's
having the disc is literally just you paying for the opportunity to watch at home. It's no different. It's even at the end of the day, the principle stays the same. You don't own it, and
you don't own it.
The thing that immediately jumped into my mind when you were just speaking was movie NFTs.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because NFTs is what I'm thinking about now as well.
Yeah.
But now I don't want to talk out of turn about NFTs. Yeah. Because as much as I know about them, I feel I don't know enough
I know nothing
to have a compelling discussion around the whole idea of NFTs. Because truthfully speaking, I'm a bit of both. I'm a bit of in the corner of this is a sham, but I'm also in the corner of I can actually see this working really well and properly only if implemented correctly.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, well, look, we are on this topic now, so we'll talk a little bit about it. I think one of the big ones that Edward is referring to in particular is that we both saw Warner Brothers and DC are pushing this Batman NFT, Batman Cowl NFT, where for the low price of $300, you can buy a mystery cowl, based on Batman. And then it comes with a whole host of other things. And allegedly, whatever NFT is created from your purchase is minted on the Plum exchange, which is just some blockchain that they're using for this. Apparently, it's eco-friendly. Anyway, the point is, from what we've seen with NFTs, right, especially the whole art side of things, I think that's just ridiculous. To me, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because an image is an image. It doesn't matter if you now own the digital signature to the original image. You still only own a digital copy of it. So it doesn't. How it is? I don't see that as being very different to owning like the JPEG or the GIF or the PNG of said image as well. Because whatever.
I will say, I'm quickly checking this up, and also for those who are interested, by the time you listen to this video, the video podcast, you will not be able to buy this anymore.
Is it already sold out?
No, it's not sold out. I don't think it will ever sell out. There are 200,000 of them, but there are only 3 days left.
Wait, hold
of
on.
buying this.
Aren't there only like 300? There's only 300.
200,000.
Oh, you see, now, again, how is that rare? How is 200,000 of something rare? It's not.
But listen to this, and I actually kind of dig this. It says, and I quote this from the official website, Batman is building a faction to defend Gotham. Collect one of 200,000 unique Batcowls and unlock a 2+ year journey of features and fun. Okay, fine, whatever. The Batcowl collection will be integrated into future stories from DC Comics. Now that is where the rarity comes in. So sure, the 200,000 is not so... It's whatever. There are 200,000 of them out there somewhere. But your
what are the chances? Yeah, but what are the chances? But what are the chances that your cowl will make it in, considering how there's 200,000 of these things?
I think because it's limited to 200,000, they already have plans to. It'll probably be a little cowl in a big
200,000.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It'll probably be like a little block in a
we
comic.
Were digressing now. We're digressing now because this topic had not. Okay, well, I mean, maybe we're not digressing, right? Because
it's
owning an NFT
licensing.
is owning a digital license to something.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what got me thinking.
But it's also different. So hold on. Let's just backtrack a little bit here.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about licensing in the traditional sense, right? We've spoken about physical licensing. We've spoken about current forms of digital licensing. NFTs are different because if you own that, you own it. It's yours. On the ledger, it's linked directly to you. So there is no copyright or fair use on it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It's a different license.
But even then, if the platform ever goes away, like let's say, for instance, there's this Ghost Recon NFTs that happened a few weeks ago. The moment the game gets pulled, how will you ever view your Ghost Recon NFT?
The NFTs, it's because it's not mutually exclusive to the game. Okay, so what I mean by that is, the content may have come from the game, but the actual NFT resides on a blockchain somewhere in the world.
But how would you ever...
So as long as the servers running the blockchain don't go down, you will always have access to it.
Okay, but the way of viewing it is literally a skin in the game, for instance.
So that's an unusual implementation of NFT, right? Because see now, this is where I think is the current issues we're going to have, because they're teething issues. These are the current teething issues we're all going to have at the moment. And that is because what Ubisoft have done here is odd, because they've tied, I'm going off what Edward is telling me here, they've tied skins in a game to a blockchain, right? But if the game stops working, you lose access to the skin, even though the skin technically lives on the blockchain, so therefore it can never actually go away because you own it. But that in itself means that they've done it the wrong way. So what I mean by that is, you can't, so you'll always own the NFT, but if you have no way to view the NFT, it then becomes worthless. Right? Unless, of course, they've done it in such a way where you don't need the game to view the skin.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe future games will include this skin, and it'll always be an instant unlock to you, I guess.
For me, and this is my hope, right? I'm a collector. I always have been. Just runs in my blood, I suppose. And I thoroughly enjoy Pokemon. Now, I've always been part of the Pokemon trading card game for a very long time. I've always enjoyed it, but honestly, over the last couple of years, they release so many new collections. It's like one every 2 months. It just becomes a little bit too difficult to collect. So you're better off playing the game than you are actually collecting the cards. With that said, they do go up in price really quickly. So there's this one collection that only came out, I think it was at the end of 2020, and now those cards are already incredibly valuable because it's not produced anymore. Now, I've had this discussion with Edward, and until I learn enough about NFTs to really know what I'm talking about, my idea that I had, or that I hope that maybe somebody listening one day at Pokemon HQ will create a Pokemon exchange and then mint online digital trading cards on the exchange. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have an exchange for a particular collection. So we'll say it's the the Pokemon Garden Knights collection. Okay, I just made that up because I don't even know, or maybe there is one that exists like that. Okay,
that sounds dope.
Then you have like a giant Pokemon exchange, but then you have a separate exchange just for Green Knight or whatever Garden Knight, right? And then you mint a certain amount of cards off that exchange. So like, let's say there's only 50 Charizards in the Garden Knight collection that can be minted on that exchange. And then you have to buy packs, digital packs, and you might be lucky enough to get one of those cards. But there's no way to know. And then if you do, you then only have 1 of 50. You see? Now that becomes a legitimate rarity, meaning that you will now have a digital card that always exists forever on that ledger, and it's always proved and linked to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I would be on board with something like that. Therefore, owning a digital NFT collection of Pokemon trading cards.
If anyone can do NFTs right, it's the Pokemon company.
Well,
they've always done rarity and trading card and anything pretty much right.
You see, the moment that I started hearing about NFTs, trading cards were the first thing that came to my mind. The first thing. I was like, this is the perfect avenue for this. Why is nobody doing this?
Yeah.
Instead, all we've gotten is artwork from this, artwork from that, a skin here, a skin. Like, why? I don't care about the rarity of the skin in my video game. What I would care about is my online trading card game having legitimate rarity that can be proven via a block exchange. That would be very interesting to me, especially if they took that concept and then had a separate Pokemon exchange for trading cards. In other words, where you could have, let's say you have a first edition Garden Knight Charizard, which was minted off the Garden Knight exchange when it first came out. You can now sell it 2 years later via the Pokemon Card Network exchange. Then you're now transferring the actual digital card license to somebody else to own. And to me, that's more of a legitimate rarity, only because, sure, this is all still fanciful, right? It's all still digital, right? So what do you really own? But then again, isn't all currency today digital? So anyway, what I'm really getting at is the rarity could be created by the exchange itself. The actual, let's say the Garden Knight exchange and the first edition minting of these cards.
All first editions.
All first editions, yes. Then, and what I mean by that is that each of the cards has the logo and so on and so forth. And then this all works through the Pokemon exchange, which can verify it online. Do you know what I mean? You can build a whole thing around it. And that is something that I would actually absolutely be involved in.
See, while you were speaking about this and talking about first editions, the first thing that came to my mind, obviously having read comic books, was comic books. The way forward for NFTs, now this goes beyond digital licensing, in my mind, is that new comic books releasing, no matter what brand it is, no matter what comic book it is, if it's a first edition, you get an automatic NFT on your name. So you buy the first edition, and in the little collector's packet is a code that you enter on whatever blockchain, and then that's yours. And then whether this comic book gets driven over, gets destroyed on fire, you'll always have the NFT. Which means one day, in 50 years, when this first edition is rare and not being
when everything is
anymore,
digital and nobody does physical anymore,
you'll still be able to sell this, your first edition, for the millions it's worth. And who knows, maybe you still have the comic book, it's still mint condition, then your NFT is even worth more. That's the way to do NFTs.
I suppose. No, I actually totally agree with you. I actually think you're onto something here as well. I suppose maybe where a lot of the pause comes in is, how do you attribute value to something that is digital? Does that make sense?
Yeah, fully.
So you have this, like, whether it was the Pokemon cards that I was talking about, or the comics that Edward is talking about, those are still digital products. Now, what I want to know about, or what I would like to query about that would be, what does that mean exactly? Like, is it just a PDF? Or is it a key, perhaps, for a online vault where only you have access to that file? But then how do you enjoy said file? Do you get what I'm saying, right? Kind of like how you need a Blu-ray player to enjoy a Blu-ray. So I would assume if you now buy first edition minted NFT comics from DC, you would then need the DC app to only ever enjoy said comics, right?
Yes.
So in that sense, I suppose, yes, it would still have rarity then, because you'd now have a digital first edition. What that means exactly is that the cryptographic key linked to your digital copy can be found on a ledger proving that it was minted when it was meant to be a first edition. Yeah. And that then, I think, gives it what seems like artificial value. But then again, in today's day and age, as I mentioned earlier, currency is almost all digital and it still has value.
That's the big thing.
Like if I have money in the bank, that's digital money. I can't, that money doesn't technically exist.
Yeah.
Unless, and if every country had to print every cent that is available in their banks, the inflation would be so extreme, it would just crash all the markets in the world.
Exactly.
That's the truth. So, in a way, this is a similar kind of artificial value, but then you'd give it value because a ledger of it exists somewhere. And I suppose that's where the allure of NFTs come in, but no one is actually implementing it properly yet because it's still so new.
You see, I would argue that it's not artificial value in a way. It's artificial in the fact that it is artifice, but it's not value being manipulated. Because
yes, you bring up a good point. But I do feel that perhaps the biggest issue would be if they turn those servers off.
That's the thing. And that rolls back to our licensing thing. That it's all, is it truly owned by you? And at the end of the day, it really isn't.
Hold on.
Even the blockchain.
Hold on. No, wait. No. Wait. It is. Hold on. It is because when you purchase an NFT, much like if you purchase cryptocurrency, you receive you can take your money and store it in a physical wallet. You know that, right?
That's true, yes.
And that's because the cryptographic hashes are stored on a unique file, and then that file can be put on an actual encrypted USB.
Yeah, like some people have coins.
Yeah. What I'm saying is you actually technically own that part of the server. It's yours to actually keep. Like you can actually keep the code on you. The only issue I think would be to prove the legitimacy of it at a later stage if the blockchain no longer exists for a hash approval. Do you know what I mean? A hash authentication.
Yeah.
In other words, if the server no longer exists anymore, like it gets blown up on a file, whatever the case is, right, and there's no digital backup of it or anything like that, how then do you match your first edition cryptographic key to the ledger? Because technically, the ledgers are just to prove that things have taken place on them, right? Yeah. So ideally, they could print out those ledger transactions, and then you would always have proof, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You see, it's so interesting. Now I'm fascinated about it. Now I get why people are so on the fence about NFTs, because I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, it's a doozy.
But truthfully, I'm a little bit more excited about them than I suppose I should be.
The issue is it's not implemented the way we want it.
There we go. That's the current problem, is that they're not being used in the way that they should be used.
Yeah,
it's all about rarity. Right? That's technically what this whole NFT thing is about. The rarity and how much something is worth. But then actually do it for things that have rarity over time. And art, unfortunately, is not one of those. Art has always been physical. It just always has been. And what I mean by art now, I'm talking about actual physical photographs and paintings, things like that. Art has always been about the physical value. It's never been about digital for art.
Yeah.
However, talking about something like a trading card game, or even comics, that's now a different and exciting avenue for it. And the reason for that is because you can still enjoy those things. So what Edward and I are talking about here is, if you had to get a minted copy of whatever comic, first edition, blah, 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 you can still enjoy that. You can still read it. It's yours to enjoy and read and whatever, you know? It doesn't matter if somebody else goes and buys the normal digital variant of it. The fact is you have one that was minted on an exchange at a certain point in time, so therefore it has virtual value. And virtual value in the rarity in the future will mean something.
Yeah.
It will mean something, much like how Bitcoin from 10 years ago versus Bitcoin now and how much that's increased in rarity, right? Because that's technically, essentially what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. I feel like that's how I understand it.
Yeah, the thing is, it must be noted, and again, we emphasize, we don't know much about NFT except of what we spoke about in the past. But basically, everything you've heard us speak about in the past about NFTs, dear listener, is what we know.
and in this episode. So look, we know a fair amount. We just, because it's so new, it's difficult to when we speak about things on the podcast, on Gettle, we speak from a place of expertise and experience. So that's why Edward and I are quite hesitant to really delve into NFTs, because we aren't experts in that field. We're novices. We've only just learning about it. So right now, everything is really very much a burgeoning opinion, right? We're only we're talking about it. We're excited about it, but we obviously still need to know more before we can really give a yay or a nay to what we think about NFTs.
Exactly.
Either way, if what we've spoken about today ends up becoming a reality, I can foresee the two of us losing a lot of money.
Yeah. If they ever do NFT Spider-Man comics, I might go broke.
If that Batman cowl thing you were talking about, if that was like, oh, you would be guaranteed a first edition copy of whatever this, so-and-so digital minted, I would be like, yeah, that's cool. But not a random cowl that... Do you know why they're doing that? Because they're following on from what the art world has set as a precedent. That's the problem. And I find it so strange that all of these intelligent minds at all of these companies are all following suit. Like, why? Just give the collector something to collect with value and rarity, and you are sure to find an audience. Pokemon Company, looking at you.
Yeah. As I said, if anyone can do it right, it's them. So
yeah, because the thing is that they'll take their time, because when Nintendo does something for the kids, it's always with children in mind, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're innocent by any means of the imagination, but
no, but they know how to do collectibles.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, debatable. I can't recall the last time there was like a first edition set from the Pokemon Company, because they should actually do that again. That'd be amazing.
Technically, aren't the first edition of any card game, any publication, the first printing, isn't that a first edition?
It is, but if it's not printed as first edition, how would you ever be able to tell the difference?
How would you... Well, that's the thing. How do collectors today tell the difference of a first edition Spider-Man 1968 copy of some
versus
random
a new one?
Piece of...
It's because of barcodes, and they have unique instances on them. So, for example, the first edition Pokemon cards literally have first edition printed on them. That's how you know.
But see, what I mean is more along the lines of it's not being printed at all anymore. That 1968 comic.
I see. Yeah, but you see, that's different again.
That's where the value comes in.
So now you have to wonder about the digital version of that. But it's the same thing applies. It would just be that you have proof that your version of the comic was minted on an exchange. No, it was just minted on an exchange. Because you can only mint so many things, right? You can make the rarity artificial. Okay, like you can make it really small if you wanted. You could be like, we're only going to mint 50 of these comics. The rest of them we're going to sell as normal digital, but we're not going to mint them on the exchange.
Yeah, I guess it costs the company money to do that.
Sorry,
the fact that I guess it costs the company money to do that. The fact that it's limited or can be made limited.
Well, so the whole thing with look, it would cost money, right? Because generally first editions say first edition.
Yeah.
90% of the time they say first edition on them. Or if they don't say first edition, then it's always the first comic in a new line.
Yeah.
So like X-Men #1, Batman #1,
Exactly.
Superman #1, right? Right.
Yeah.
But that's for comics now. I don't have much experience with comics because I'm a collectible card person. I used to collect all of the X-Men Legends and all sorts of stuff back in the day. And for those, they were always printed on the card itself if it was a first edition or not. And that's how you knew instantly the rarity. So I would assume going forward, because think about it, something that's digital doesn't need to be minted on anything, right?
Exactly.
But if you have a digitally minted first edition of something, it then has rarity. That's what we're talking about here. So basically it's saying, like, let's say there was a new Spider-Man #1 that comes out this year. It's Spider-Man 2022, okay, or 2222, right? So it's in the future, whatever the case is. And then they mint 22 copies of the first edition of this comic, but it's minted on the 2nd of February 2022. Okay? And then you now own one of these 22. And in your copy, your digital copy, it has first edition mint.
Yeah.
But then every single one of the others are not based off of a ledger. So in other words, their versions of the comic they were not key. There's no cryptographic hash that links them to a ledger. They're just normal copies. That's the difference. So now you have an artificial rarity, which is still rarity, regardless of whether we like it or not.
No, I get that. It's like for cars. It's like the LFA, the Lexus LFA. Only 200 of those were ever made. The original one. 200 more were made for the Nürburgring version. Anyway, so in a sense, that's artificial rarity.
Because the castle exists. They just made 200 with like one little special difference.
Exactly. Now, if you want to buy one of them, you have to pay 4 times the price that they were originally sold for. Because you buy them from collectors.
The whole thing is removing to a fully digital age. So that's where this is all coming into play. It's whereby, cool, you've got this thing, but do you have a first edition of it? And then you can be like, yeah, because I can prove the cryptographic hash, bitch. You know?
Yeah, like I've got this on my flashy drive, which has a cute Spider-Man on it.
You see,
and it's mine.
But imagine how cool that would be. Imagine you get your first edition and then they actually send you a drive with your hash on it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I mean? Because then you still, for those of the physical purists, will still have something.
Yeah. Yeah, like along with like today's comic books usually come in those hard plastic shells and they're rated. Now, imagine if one of them had an extra little block inside the shell with the flash drive in it.
With the minted hash on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because you see, you wouldn't be, no, see, so that won't work.
Why?
Because the whole thing with the hashing on the exchange and all of this, that gets tied immediately to you and your wallet.
Yeah.
So you can't you can't put that in a drive if it's not linked to anyone.
No, you first link it, and I mean a slot, so you can open it up and.
Oh, anyway. Either way, what is fascinating about this is that no. What is most fascinating about this conversation, and you actually did point it out earlier, and we are bringing it now to its natural end, is how nobody owns licensing, nobody ever has, but NFTs can change that.
That's what I was thinking.
Although it's a digital license, it is a digital license you own. It's yours. It's linked directly to you.
And this is the bombshell thing I wanted to get to. I think the big thing on NFTs is that it's rare. If the moment you hear NFT, you think, oh, rarity. But at the end of the day, what if everything becomes an NFT? What if that's the future of things?
That is the future.
If you have a first edition NFT worth millions, you have one. If you have a normal digital comic book worth $10 on your NFT, it's only worth $10, but it's still an NFT and it's still yours. It can't go away. I think that's the future. If everything, including licensing, just becomes non-fungible tokens.
But I think that is the future. So understand, right? that a non-fungible token is just a fancy way of saying that you can't duplicate it. It can't be replicated. But the thing is, it's a stupid term because that is literally how blockchains work. That is literally the technology. They've just given it another name to apply it to other things. That's it, really. So instead of being like, oh, I've got a Bitcoin, because a Bitcoin is essentially, if you do a transaction, it's a non-fungible token. You've literally done a transaction on the ledger. Do you get what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So this is just you now own that token.
Yeah.
Instead of the token being on the ledger and then proving that you have the money. This now, that's exactly it. The token exists on the ledger to prove that it's yours. So nobody else can duplicate that token. That's the difference. So every cryptographic hash license is assigned to like one person or one wallet. So yeah, well, there we go, Ed. This was a great discussion. I did not think we were going to lead towards NFTs like we did, but I'm actually so glad we have because it's right.
I did not think my knowledge about licensing would clarify what NFTs are. And at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's
the layman's way of understanding what NFTs are.
I guess so.
Right?
Yeah.
No, this was wonderful. Thank you so much, Edward. I mean, of course, it's always a pleasure doing this every week. For those of you who do listen to us and enjoy, as always, talk to us. Have we gotten this completely wrong? Do we have zero idea of what we're talking about? What do you think of licensing? Are you a physical purist? Are you all digital like us? Let us know. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Is there some merit in our ideas for the future of licensing?
So there we go. Well, this is the end of Gable 87. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we look forward to hopefully letting you hear from us again soon in the next episode.
If we don't pirate. Bye.
Bye.